Informative and unpredictable, testing the limits like only we can. From Span Enterprises in Rock Hill, South Carolina, it's the Bandit Room. And welcome to the Bandit Room. I'm Charles, and we're joined today by our special guests, Andrew and Austin. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Now, our topic today is what school doesn't prepare you for. Now, modern education is a wonderful thing, but there's a lot of parts of everyday life that school and college really doesn't prepare the average person for. And we're going to talk about those topics today. There's a lot of them. We're going to start with a few big ones. I'd say, the biggest headache that school, there's no real force that teaches you about this, is taxes. It's a major part of life. You kind of understand the basics of how taxes work when you're a kid. But, unless your parents, sit down and kind of talk to you about, what they do at tax time and things like that, you don't really, there's no standard part of education that really prepares you for that. It's pretty wild. Taxes are a big one. On the economic front, there's also, budgeting and things like just a lot about money that doesn't really get taught to kids in school or in college for that matter. So that's something interesting that I think our educational system could probably, make some changes to adjust those things. Any other thoughts on that?
So I just recently graduated 2 years ago from college, and a lot of these things aren't being taught, such as the taxes.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of really have to learn that on your own, and it's not the easiest. There are things out there to make it a little easier, but having that basic set of knowledge would definitely have helped those first years.
For sure. And I'm always struck by, the idea of college loans. That's a hot topic these days. People, the talk about student loans and what a burden they are to the younger generation today. It's crazy. You make a very serious decision when you're about 17 years old, to decide, a major economic decision that you don't really put too much thought behind, I mean, some people are fortunate enough to have things taken care of for them, but most college students end up with student loans, and they can vary, they're $10,000 to $50,000. People are saddling themselves with this student debt at a very young age, and there's not a whole lot of practical advice that's given to them. I know I didn't think about it when I first signed out. I just thought, student loans, it's something everybody has to do. I assume I'll have a good job and I'll be able to pay for these things, but I didn't actually sit down and think about, okay, this is going to be, $300 to $400, whatever that may be, every month for the next, 10 years after you graduate, whatever that may be. So, it's just a wild thing. Any other thoughts on economics and things like that?
Yeah, that was definitely, for the student loan perspective, that was a big thing for me, because I think, although it was in my name, it didn't really hit me that it was in my name until after graduation. And it is true, after those 6 months, you have to start making payments. So it was definitely an adjustment, to kind of get used to that. But, the biggest thing is to plan what you do make once you hopefully get a job after you graduate. Just try to make some form of a payment, because if not, you will be stuck in it for quite some time.
Yeah, and there are a lot of programs and things like that out there where you can adjust your payment schedule based on income and things like that. But the most important thing really is, I think, educating the student who's actually taking on those loans when they're getting them. And hopefully the parents are relatively responsible in that scenario. But you've also got financial aid officers and things like that from schools that. It's really kind of their job to educate you on what exactly you're signing up for. And I don't know. And I know in my case, I didn't really consider all of the major obligations that I was necessarily getting myself into at the time. I just kind of went on the optimistic hope that hopefully I'll get a good job and we'll be able to pay these things off. But that's not something everybody is fortunate enough to deal with.
I was kind of just taught, you go to college, you don't really plan ahead, you plan which college you go to.
Right.
As far as that goes, that's about
Yeah, yeah. It's just kind of a part of American life. You just you take on these loans, you go to school, and then hopefully things will work out for you. But they don't always work out for people. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to have a job, but I'm sure. There's tons of people that I know that it's been a real major obligation after they graduated to figure out what they're going to do with that.
Yeah, I still have friends who haven't even found jobs yet. 2 years
sure.
later.
Yeah.
I think we actually graduated the same year, actually. Yeah. But there's some people that have not found anything, or if they did find something, they weren't able to make the minimal payment. So.
Yeah.
And then even that, finding a job related in your degree.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
A whole nother topic.
Yeah. Budgeting I think is big. You understand the concepts of budgeting and things like that, but you maybe if you take business classes or economics classes, you might have some practical applications where you're talking about budgets, but it's really not something that I think schools or colleges really sit down and talk to people about either.
Not at least the fundamentals of after college,
right? How
you set your finances and are able to handle them.
Yeah.
That's how.
I think credit cards are another thing. People, at least for me, when I was in school, they sort of warned against the perils of credit cards and things like that, but they don't necessarily talk about the other sides of like credit cards are basically a necessity at the same time. Obviously, if you don't pay them off, they can be detrimental, but at the same time, it's kind of a necessity of everyday life at the same time. And I don't think people talked about it in a practical way when I was in school. I don't know about you guys, but
same here. I know for like me, I always laugh about credit cards because my dad, he had me terrified to get a credit card, and I was like, what is so and I was always very independent. I never had to like run to my parents to get money when I was in school, but it was always that fear of if you get a credit card, you can mess up your credit.
Right.
Years on the road, you won't be able to get a house.
Right.
So I didn't get a credit card until I was 22. Like it was actually some years.
Yeah.
But once I got it, okay, I can kind of figure this out. But little things. Yeah. I got like an American Eagle credit card, but I still didn't even tell my parents until like months later.
Yeah, they really don't tell you the benefits to also having a credit card.
Right, because you're maintaining a good credit score is obviously very important, and you can't really do that if you don't get a credit card or don't have some sort of credit accounts out there, when you're young, and then you're trying to get an apartment when you graduate, and all of a sudden you've got no credit history. So,
fortunately enough, my dad did know about that, so he got me a credit card whenever I had my first job, or it was my second job around 16.
Yeah. But not everybody has that.
Yeah, because they don't teach it
these days. As far as just everyday life, credit scores are so important, and I feel like they may have talked about it a little bit in college, like you need to make sure you have a good credit score, but like they didn't really talk about what that meant, as far as like making payments on time and having credit, which is actually a big part of it, is having the credit available. But another thing that's sort of glossed over, and you're just expected to just pick up on your own somehow, but somehow it's incredibly important when you actually get out in the real world. Some more things we had talked about. Time management is a big thing that, of course, you have to understand your time management in school. You obviously have projects and due dates and things like that you're worried about. But at the same time, when you're thinking about time management and deadlines and things like that, you're thinking about them from the most procrastinator's perspective ever. When you're in school, because it's just like you have a major project. You wait till the last minute, you stay up all night the night before, get it done, turn it in, and that's just how you operated. But in the real world, it's not typically like that. I can't just say, oh, we got this big project. I'm gonna get like 5 of my coworkers here to stay up all night with me and then finish this big presentation. So yeah, that's just another wild thing that doesn't really line up.
You're told to use your time wisely, but no one teaches you how to use it.
Right. And somehow you can get by in school by just doing those all-nighters and whatnot. You're a young kid at that point, so no harm to you for staying up, whatever works, to get the job done. But generally, in most companies and work adult situations, you can't always just wait till the last minute, stay up all night and and take care of whatever
you
you're.
Still function all day. At
exactly.
Work
Yeah. You still.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't just skip a class like you could at work. You can't just if you stay up all night. I used to do that. I used to stay up all night. Maybe skip the first class.
Right.
You can pick or choose.
Right.
Yeah.
But 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock comes very early in the morning, and
That's
you're there
true.
all day. So.
Yep. That's true. Yeah. A big thing in college, there's a lot of people that have the perspective that, well, I guess each class really runs differently, but there's definitely the attitude that like, well, some classes you can miss, you can skip class, you can, as long as you're there for the big test, the big exam, whatever it is, then things are okay. But it's definitely a radical departure from what the real world is like as far as attendance and things like that. You can't just not show up for work 5 days and then show up for a big presentation and expect things to go well. Whereas, college and things like that aren't necessarily like that. Some schools, I know some of my classes were very dedicated to that. You couldn't miss more than this number of days or whatever, or you might fail the class. But there's definitely tons of college courses out there where attendance is not mandatory at all. But that's just it doesn't exactly line up with the way things are once you get out of that situation. Let's see some other things. Fixing things. Nobody really teaches you how to fix something when something goes wrong in your house. How to change a tire. How to do some general things that eventually would save you a lot of money in the long run if you knew how to do them.
Kind of a, I guess, train of thought of how should I assess the problem that's given to me. We learn that somewhat in school with, I guess, problem solving for math problems. However, that my problem isn't going to be about math. It's going to be how do I fix this flat tire?
Right. My sink's leaking or something like that. How do I fix this situation?
Not how fast is it going to take train A to get to
station
B.
Right. It's not always the most applicable. But I can't think of how many situations. Fortunately, there's YouTube and things like that people can use to learn how to fix a lot of things that you might not automatically know about if something messes up in your refrigerator or your pipes or something like that. There's a lot of things you can do yourself, but man, that would just be fantastic if there was some kind of situation, a class or whether that's in high school or college that kind of teaches you a lot of this basic stuff that would
skills,
seriously
to make it in the real world.
Right, a lot of the hands-on things you do not get in school. I can't recall anything really hands-on that we ever actually did.
Right.
Really stick with it.
Now, a lot of schools, they used to do what they called home ec, home ec. And that typically was kind of geared towards ladies. Ladies would take home ec and you learn how to cook and take care of a baby and sew and things like that. But that's all stuff that guys needed to know too. Today, I think people should do home ec for everybody. There need to be like life skills courses where you're learning how to, how to do that. Kids should know how to cook. Kids should know how to sew. That would be helpful if you knew how to mend your own clothes when something happens. You're not just throwing things out and buying more things that you can't afford.
I know in middle school I did have a home ec class, and that was probably the class that I took the most away from. I learned how to sew, how to cook a few things. It really definitely helped. Even though it's middle school, it still prepared me and set me along for...
it prepared you for things that you actually end up doing in life.
Using after schooling.
Yeah, none of the schools that I went to had home ec.
No, I didn't either. No,
at all.
No.
So luckily for me, I always went to my grandparents' house after school. My parents were still at work.
Right.
So that kind of helped me learn how to cook. Cut the grass, do laundry. Grandparents, whatever the grandkids are not doing, have them do something. So
they used to make women go around, like high school girls carry like a baby around, for a day to show them like, oh, you got to take care of your baby because one day you're gonna have a baby and you'll have to carry it around. Guys didn't have to do that, but it's not like women are the only people holding babies in today's society. It's not like
yeah, I'm not gonna not hold my baby.
You grow up, you have kids. I mean, the men are doing a significant portion of the raising of those children as well. So, I think we need to bring back home ec for everybody.
Yeah, it's a gender neutral role.
Yeah.
Especially life after college, because if it's just you,
for sure,
you have to survive.
You need to survive
somewhere.
You can't just go out to eat all the time. You can't just pay somebody to fix everything whenever something goes wrong. You can't just, I mean, it's just so much that is not taught to children and college students these days. It's crazy. What were some other things?
I think another big one would be kind of personal skills.
Yeah.
So you're not really taught how to interact. You do have groups and such, but you're not, I guess, given tasks where you have to socialize and just learn how to generally be a pleasant person.
How to be a good person.
Right.
How to be a good person.
After college.
Classes on how to be a good person. Well, that's true. I mean, they'll to their credit, they'll teach you like interviewing techniques or like how to make a good impression and things like that. But at the same time, you can be a great interviewer, but if somebody hires you and you turn out to be a jerk, it's not gonna stick.
Exactly.
You're not gonna be able to keep that job, whatever it is. So yeah, definitely. I think lessons and just how you're perceived by your employees, how to have good interactions with others, is incredibly important. How to make a good impression throughout your time at a place, not just in the beginning to make an impressive interview.
And just cognitively picking up other people's feeling. Or
noticing other people's
aspect,
emotions. Showing empathy. Being able to sympathize with others and show that you are a decent person and care about other people. It is important. You can get a job and have all the intelligence in the world, but if you don't get along with anybody that you work with, it's just not going to last. And companies don't want to hire people like that. And, it's just it's another thing. Something else that people
skills are definitely key.
Yeah.
Even just saying good morning, the little stuff like that will make a difference in not only your coworkers but also you as well.
For sure.
And I feel like it's only progressing worse as more technology comes in hand and social media, because I know kids are getting phones and social media younger and younger.
For sure.
Each year, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's also hindering actual social interaction with humans.
That's true.
Not other people.
People are used to texting each other and Snapchatting and all these other things.
And I think in awkward moments, so like if you're new to a situation, people always, I'm like that, which I'm trying to get away from. But you kind of tend to just go straight to your phone.
Fiddle with your phone.
That's a perfect example. I know when I'm in public and I don't know what to do with myself, I just pull out my phone and it's great.
It's it's like you need to be taught how to be present these days, because kids aren't, I mean, it used to be you'd go to school and you'd go home and you wouldn't see your school friends until the next day. But today you're constantly communicating. You're never technically. I mean, your mind is always somewhere else at the same time. You're never like actually where you are. Yeah, a few other things on like learning styles, for example, just the way school is structured compared to how most people's everyday life is structured. You go to school for your whole until you're 20, 21, 22, and you're brought up in a pure lecture format primarily. You're used to people telling you things, you writing them down, memorizing them, and then remembering that for a test or something like that. But I can't think of a single work situation that's actually like that, where it's not like we just sit around listening and taking notes about things and memorizing them. It's everything is based on projects and tasks and things like that. Fortunately, some schools are make an effort to show more project-based learning or team-based activities and things like that. But at the same time, traditionally, school is primarily structured as a lecture format where you're memorizing facts to take a test and move on to the next thing. You don't necessarily have to remember those things. You just take the test, you achieve it, and you move on to something else. But I think the structure is obviously very different. You know, if you're not a good note taker, it's very hard to succeed in school. If you're not a very good memorizer at things like that, then you're not. School is going to be harder for you to achieve. Whereas, you know, the everyday world is not structured that way. You don't have to sit down and take notes about everything and memorize them to achieve the, you know, projects that you need to achieve.
And you have the internet at your resource to really look up stuff that you don't know or figure out how to do the tasks you need in your job.
That's true. Everybody has infinite knowledge at their fingertips these days. So
was a best friend.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea of, you know, memorizing everything is kind of ridiculous, because, you know, you don't have to memorize everything. It's obviously great to have as much information as possible, but so much basic info is just readily available now that you don't have to, you know, unless you're going to be stranded on an island somewhere.
Which, if you were, you would need those basic life skills to survive that you're not taught.
That's true. That's true. Memorizing some simple facts and being a good test taker wouldn't help you in that situation. Another thing is, I think, the hours. You know, when you're a kid, especially in like, you know, elementary school and things like that, where you're expected to be fully aware at like 7 o'clock in the morning, whereas most jobs start at 9. You know, most, you know, general work atmospheres, you know, don't start that early in the day, and they expect you to be fully present, you know, at 7 o'clock, ready to go, ready to start memorizing those facts and listening to those teachers talk about, you know, whatever they're talking about.
I feel like that's not beneficial for the student nor the teacher.
No, seriously, you have to get up so early, and it's wild. It's just another departure from, you know, where, you know, the education system is and where kind of, you know, everyday life is. So. Any other topics we haven't talked about?
I just know, like, for me, I just had this thought in my mind for years that all your bills were due the same day. You pay everything, and the rest of the month was just all your money. That's not the case at all.
That's something else nobody prepares you for. You're just like, and also, like, how many bills you're going to have. You know, you have to make sure you got the utility bill, the insurance thing, the this, the that.
And with that, planning and time management would be very helpful for that.
Now, we do get a little bit of a break because now you can do auto draft.
Right. Yeah, it's
but
definitely.
If you don't do that, scheduling, make sure you don't get dates mixed up. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's true.
One more big one I do have is really learning from failure.
So
you're always taught to succeed and success, and you have to make the best grades. You're not really taught how you can use that failure to do better next time.
Right. That's true. Yeah, you grow up in a pass-fail environment, you know, and there's not as much focus on how
bad.
It's always bad, and it always is bad. But at the same time, there are takeaways from that you need to be thinking about. Yeah.
And every failure will not get you fired. I think a lot of people think too, if you make one mistake, you lose your job. You know, people understand. Especially if you're fresh out of college. You still have to learn.
I think most people are accommodating. Most people expect growth. And you can't have that growth without a few missteps here and there. All right, interesting. Any other topics?
I was just gonna say that's why I liked internships so much because they really get you get to view what the life after school is all about.
That's true. To see what the real world is like beyond your.
Even a little thing like sending a fax. I never had to send a fax until I did my internship, and I was like, "This stuff is so minute," but you know, little stuff like that you don't get in school.
Right. That's true. All right. Any other topics, or you think we pretty much covered that?
I think we could.
All right. I can't think of anything else. I'm sure there's plenty more, but
I'm sure.
Feel free to comment below and let us know your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. Stick around for next week and see what we talk about on the Bandit Room. Thanks for joining.